What's going on, everybody? My name is Austin Pope, for those that don't know me. I hunt all over the two beautiful states of Florida and Georgia, searching our beautiful public lands for venison for the table. In this video, I'm going to be going over some great advice for brand new hunters or hunters that are even entering their second, third, or fourth hunting season. All the tactics go for anyone and everyone, regardless of the state you're in. The concepts are exactly the same. Number one is explore, explore, explore. As a new hunter, you may not be familiar with walking through the woods much, or if you have walked through the woods, maybe on a hike or something, you may not be familiar with walking off the beaten path. In order to become a successful hunter, you have to become familiar with walking these unfamiliar areas deeper from where you may have to park your vehicle. In doing so, it will help give you a better sense of direction when you don't have markers to go off of on a trail or an obvious trailhead that you're just following down. It'll also benefit you in learning the different types of habitat for the particular management area you're wanting to hunt. When exploring these off the beaten path areas, it's a good idea to always carry a compass with you, just in case your sense of direction isn't none to par. And obviously, if you're exploring new areas, you don't know the areas anyways. So let's say you don't have phone signal, you can't use your map, you always have your compass just in case. Number two is stay away from the crowds. As a new hunter, you may pull up to a parking area or see a long stretch of road on the day you're wanting to hunt and see a lot of vehicles parked at that particular area. Now, as an inexperienced hunter, you may think, well, there's a lot of people here, so maybe this is a good area to hunt. Maybe you should go check it out too. Or you're driving down the road or walking down a trail, see a bunch of flagging tape, and think, well, a hunter left all this flagging tape, maybe I should go walk it and see where it leads. Those things are absolutely what you should not do. Now, few and far between, especially here in Florida, you may pull up to a parking area that may have 1, 2, 3 trucks, 4 trucks, whatever you may have, and you'll have hundreds of acres or thousands behind the gate where you have to park to go in. That's a very rare occasion for our management areas here in Florida to have that type of acreage. But, or say you have that instance here, or you go up to a different state that has bigger parcels of land behind their parking gates, having multiple vehicles parked there not necessarily is a deterrent to go in if you have that big of a large parcel to go into. You'll have plenty of room between everybody, and even though there's a few trucks there, if you have 1,000 acres to hunt behind the gate, that area necessarily isn't going to be as pressured. But use your own discretion on whether to enter or not based on the amount of land you have behind that gate to hunt and the amount of vehicles there or hunters you think might be present. Though in a general standpoint, if you find an area that has consistent hunters hanging out in that area, parking their trucks, what have you, or even recreational people walking their dogs, hiking, whatever, just people in general, it's a good idea for the most part not to bother with that type of area. Go find you something else that's a little less disturbed. Number three, rely on wind direction way more than you rely on scent elimination products. Scent elimination products are something you should absolutely have in your arsenal and use consistently. From washing your clothes, storing your clothes, spraying on your clothes before you even enter the woods, they are a great tool to help you stay minimal on your scent. However, a deer's nose has roughly 297 million scent receptors. 297 million. In comparison to a bloodhound that has 230 million. That being said, there's absolutely zero brand of scent elimination products that's ever been made or ever will be made that can 100% stop your scent from going into a deer's nose and him smelling you. Which is why it is so important for you to be extremely strategic in the way you approach your stand and your stand setup location. Having the wind to your face, or at least catty corner to your face, during your approach and during your setup is absolutely crucial in your success. Now, do I use a scent elimination product myself? Yes, absolutely. I believe when it is used properly, it can absolutely knock down the amount of scent molecules that you may be carrying around with you. I've used a lot of different scent elimination products. Personally, I like Scent Killer brand by Wildlife Research Center. If you want to get the best price you can find with a big 1-gallon jug to go along with it, go to the link in the description below and it'll take you right to it. Number four, set up near changes in habitat. If you hunt in the southeast, especially Florida or Georgia, you could be in a big pine forest full of gallberries, palmettos, bayheads, big swamps, or a mix of creek bottoms with it. Or you could be hunting a big block of mature hardwoods, or a place that looks like a big grass plain with small patches of upland pines and bayheads in it. Regardless of what state I'm hunting, I like having a lot of changes of habitat terrains within the management area that I'm hunting. Now I'm going to show you a basic map on the screen of a simple setup to try, just to give you an idea of what you should be looking for. Now first glance at this map, I want to tell you my super fancy arrows and stars that I have put up here. The white arrow with the white star, top right of the screen, is going to be just pointing towards basically a bunch of pines, which a majority of this whole map is just a bunch of pines. But just so you can see on the Google Earth view of what the different trees would look like, right around all that star and the white arrow, that's all pine trees. The red arrow with the red star, what we call bayhead, is basically just a small, thick swamp that holds a bunch of water. It can hold deer and be good for hunting on the edges for deer in certain instances, but generally I'm not going to hunt something that is that small. Now the yellow arrow with the yellow star is what we would call the edges. It's where the edge of that big swamp meets the pines, and there's even a little bayhead just on the eastern side of that star, which would be your right side of the yellow star. Just for a basic setup, that is something I absolutely would say would be a great starter point. At least walking the edges, looking for fresh sign, always a good point too. Now once you gather more experience in woodsmanship, you can further deeper into the swamp safely, unless you already feel capable of doing so. If that's the case, I would recommend you dive deep into that bug where the blue arrow and blue star is located. Get deep inside that swamp and explore all through. That's just an example map, just to give you an idea of the type of things I look for and to give you a little idea of a basic setup you could try. Number 5, the rut. Even the newest of deer hunters have heard of the very much loved term, the rut. But for those that do not know, the rut is the breeding season for whitetails and is the best time to find the most bucks on their feet, especially the most mature and generally bigger bucks on their feet during daylight hours, which obviously is key in order to hunt them. There are 3 phases to the rut: the pre-rut, the peak rut, and the post-rut. Now obviously, talking about the rut, that is a whole video all in itself. So I want to shorten it up super simple as much as I can shorten this up and go through the 3 phases for you. Number 1, pre-rut. The pre-rut is when the bucks are starting to establish dominance between each other, starting to get some fighting going on, starting to see a lot more scrapes, a lot more rubs, and as we continue into the pre-rut, getting closer and closer to that peak, you're starting to see more bucks getting a little bit more daylight activity in them more than the nighttime. They're starting to search a little bit more for those does that are starting to maybe come into estrus. The time's getting close. Everybody knows it's starting to ramp up. As we go into that later pre-rut, it'll just keep getting more intensified and more intensified as you get closer to the peak. For the most part, they're not too concerned with seeking out does just yet, but varying on which part of the pre-rut you're in, that early part or the latter part of it, you may get lucky and come across a doe or have a doe come across your path that just so happens to have a buck following. That's one of my favorite times to hunt as well as the pre-rut, just as much as the peak for most, which we're getting into now. Peak rut. The peak rut, majority of does are in estrus or going to be coming into estrus any moment, and all the boys know it. Lots of deer vocalizations, chasing, and a lot of breeding going on. This is the time of year throughout the entire country that everybody looks forward to, and it's the time of year throughout the entire country that most bucks and most mature bucks get placed on a hunter's tag. Though varying on the buck to doe ratio, meaning the amount of does versus bucks in the area, this can either be a super action-packed time or it can be a pretty dead time. The 3rd phase is the post-rut. Now the post-rut is generally not nearly as action-packed as any other part of the entire rut, but there are still a few and far does between each other that are starting to come into estrus again that were not bred. So if you can find that one hot doe that that buck just so happened to find, that could be some great action for you and can still be some great hunting. Now personally, this time of year, post-rut, I tend to focus on the more thicker areas, more further away areas. I'm not so much focusing on where the does are at this time. Granted, you still want does being around, that's an obvious, but I'm not as focused on that as I was during the peak rut. Now I'm trying to find those more hideaway places for these deer to be and stay, not have to worry about hunter pressure. That's just my personal tactic. If you have any other thoughts yourself, maybe some experienced hunters that are watching this, leave your comment in the comment section, letting me know and letting other guys that are watching this know, and gals, know what's working for you in the post-rut time period. But for me, public land down here in the southeast and places that get hit pretty hard, so it works for me. In reality, all three phases of this rut depend solely on how well you're going to be able to hunt it in regards to hunting pressure and location. Now with all that said, let's not forget about the secondary rut, which a lot of states get to experience. Now the secondary rut is generally really late in the season, and that's because the does that were bred the season before, really late in the year, their fawns, coming up this year now, are hitting their first estrus cycle at roughly 6 months old. Now when this happens, you get a second rut period that takes place, and varying on how many fawns you had that made it up to that 6 months, you can have a phenomenal secondary rut period that's just as high action packed as that first main rut period. But again, depends on location and deer numbers you have to work with. Now with all of this said, this completely can be thrown out the window in some cases when you're hunting certain areas of the Southeast, especially here in Florida. Here in Florida and parts of Southeast states in general, but especially Florida, we have one of the most sporadic rut dates and rut schedules throughout the entire country. Our rut can be anywhere from June all the way to May. That varies on where you are in the state. Generally, for the most part, we do have certain areas and certain regions of the state that are more centralized in their dates of main conception for the does. But talk to your state game managers, talk to more experienced hunters that have got to see a lot of ruts in the area. And of course, let your own experience be your guide on when you feel those peak rut periods are. I actually have a really short video that shows you a very simple way to determine rut dates for yourself during the spring and summer months so you can have a better idea for the coming season. If you want to see that video, I'm going to put a card right here somewhere in one of these corners, and you can click on that and it'll take you directly to it. And last but absolutely not least, please do not give up. I was a new hunter too. I experienced some of the toughest seasons of my life just to be able to see a deer, let alone be able to fill a tag on one. But now I'm one of the most confident hunters to walk. Do I still struggle some seasons? Absolutely. We're all going to have that no matter how good of a hunter you are. But I also have enough confidence now that no matter where I go, you can put me anywhere and I will fill a tag. You have to be willing to try different tactics, different areas, different approach, see what works best for you. It doesn't matter if you listen to me or listen to someone else. The best teacher you will ever have is going to be your own experience. But of course, listening to me is going to speed up that process for you. Now, if you would, please comment and let me know if this video helped you in any way. And if it did, let me know what points stood out the most to you and that helped you the most. And also, let me know if you're a new hunter that's watching this or an experienced hunter that's watching this. So if this video was helpful to you in any way, please hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Now, most importantly, with me preaching this advice to you, if you want to see this advice implemented and the results given, click on one of these two videos here and let them speak for themselves. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one.